Okay. Everybody ready to roll? All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of University City, Texas. It is Tuesday, believe it or not, August 2nd, 2022. And I'll call this meeting to order now at 6:31 p.m. and call for a quorum check, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Here.
Councilmember Buck.
Here.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Najarian.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Here. A quorum is present. We shall proceed. The invocation this evening will be given by Councilmember Goolsby. I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards. Would everyone please stand?
Please bow. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for this day you've given us. One thing we would like to ask for is that you would help to alleviate this heat, give us some rain in our area, and we ask that you help those that are dealing with the floods in other areas. Be with those that are dealing with the fires and protect the people that are fighting those. Lord, tonight we ask for understanding to help us to understand those items that we deal with up here that we usually don't on a daily basis. We ask for guidance to help us to make the proper decisions. And we ask for patience whenever none of those things tend to come together. We ask that you be with our first responders, our military, and all of our elected leaders. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. It's our first meeting in August. It only hit 102 degrees today, so we're back on track for the world's record in over 100 degree days. But that's okay. It's all running very well. Thank you everyone for coming. A couple of very special presentations I want to do this evening is before we move on with our council meeting. And I've been saying for the last month or so that there's an opportunity for us to recognize certain people or organizations, groups that have done something above and beyond for our community. And there's one very special one that I'm just so proud to be able to bring to your attention this evening. I want to introduce a couple of young boys and girls and have them come up here and I'm going to talk with them. I would like to have Julie, Parker, and Preston come forward. Okay, guys, come up here by me. Come up here by me so everybody can see you. Come here.
Watch out.
These three youngsters are little entrepreneurs. Okay? What they did is they had a lemonade stand, and they made over $100, right? $100. And I want to ask Preston if he will tell you how much fun that was. Was it a lot of fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, he is not a local boy. He's from Austin area, but he has some pretty special cousins, right? Yep. Okay. What they did is they had their little lemonade stand, and they did make over a little over $100. So why don't you tell me what you did with that money?
We donated it to the Parks Department.
You donated it to what?
The Parks Department.
The Parks Department. Did you everybody hear that? They took those $100 that they could have used and spent and had all kinds of good fun times with, and they donated it to the Parks Partners at the Parks and Recreation meeting last week. And so I wanted to make sure that we recognize these youngsters because that is something that is just so special. And I just can't tell you how thrilled we are that these young people, the leaders of our cities in the future, think so much of their own communities that they went ahead and did this. So let's give them a phenomenal round of applause.
Pat, you each get to pick out a free pumpkin.
That's going to be in the fall.
It's gonna be
We have all
in a couple of months.
So,
Free
thank
pumpkins.
you very much. You
Notice
guys.
she didn't say what size.
I didn't say what size. I don't remember.
Next year.
Next year, you're going to do it again?
Yeah.
All right. Congratulations.
They're so good.
Thank you.
I know when I found out about that, it was just like, there is no other way. We've got to recognize these young children for what they have done. And they did it on their own. Nobody coaxed them. They just said, you know what? We're going to give it to the parks. So our parks are going to be $100 better for sure, thanks. Okay, in that same vein, there's a couple of other presentations that special individuals would like to give this evening in our area of awards, because they're kind of like awards. So our first presenter is from A&E Plumbing. Come on up, Joy.
I can't to you.
No? I want you to give it to Randy. I want you to give it to Randy. Tell everybody what it's about and then present it to Randy.
So this is going to be a donation for the pickleball courts in UC for them to get them taken care of.
There's a picture of what they're gonna look
There's a
like.
picture of what they're going to look like.
Are you all familiar with pickleball? It's the new in thing to do. Sure.
Introduce them. Introduce them.
Oh, Joe, we appreciate him, not only them and Parks Partners, we appreciate y'all doing this for our project. We've had a presentation at Parks and Rec. They overwhelmingly accepted it, you know, and we're definitely looking forward to it. And it's, well, should be moving on it soon. Just working on the logo stuff and everything, so.
It'll look good for you guys.
All right.
Yay, thanks,
So get your
Joanne.
packet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Randy, you don't need to go too far away. Okay. All right, we have one other special award presentation this evening. I'll ask Ms. Lori Putt to come up and make that presentation.
In the same line of what's going on, presenting this check to Randy is really an honor for all of us. Now, for the past couple of years, this chamber hasn't seen a whole lot of good things going on. And it gets to the point where you think maybe this is what the majority of the city is feeling, where really it's the minority, because we have a city of 20,000 people, and out of the 20,000 people, I'm giving you $41,360. And to me, that's the way the city is saying, thank you, great job, nice place to live, let's keep it up. So,
Awesome, thank you.
thank you.
I want to, myself and our Parks and Rec Commission want to thank Parks Partners for their continued support of our parks. This money will go towards, if you see here, this is a Red Horse Park. They're over the swings and everything. There's an awning that will go over that. Again, this picture of it, there it is. That's one out of Northview, but it looks similar to that. That will be placed over that one. And then this one here is the other new playscape. So all the smaller areas right there, the swings, the merry-go-round and all that will have another awning similar to this one, a lot of shade. I've had already comments about it being hot out there, as you know, it's been hot for the kids and stuff like this. So this would be tremendous help out there. And then go back to the pickleball. And then Parks Partners is also, you'll see with A&A and Parks Partners are contributing for the pickleball court as well. So that's what all this money will go towards. And we're very excited for it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Has anybody ever played pickleball out in the audience so far? Have you? Anybody? It's pretty fun. It's really a neat sport. You think it's really no-brainer because it's in a smaller net and you hit a little ball, but it's not that easy. It's a great form of exercise. Fantastic form of exercise. Thank you very much. That all of what we did so far has been a result of what happened at the Parks and Recreation meeting, and I wanted to personally acknowledge those young children and let Lori and Joey make their presentations as well. So this is a great opportunity for you to recognize that people care in our community and they're looking for the betterment of everything that has to do with Universal City. And we're so proud to be able to make these announcements and receive these checks by Randy this evening. So thank you all very, very much. All right, move on. First item we have is our consent agenda. It's under tab A. There are actually 7 items on that consent agenda. They can be considered as routine, and one vote would supply the needs for us. But if someone wants to pull one of those items off the agenda and look at it separately, they certainly can. So I'll open it up. Who's approval?
Yeah, can we please pull item G for separate vote?
Okay, who wants to pull item G for a separate vote, and that doesn't need a second or anything, we just pull it. Okay, so, okay,
I'll second.
decided the second, that poll, motion made by Councilmember Neville, and second by Councilmember Shelby. Any further discussion on that? Okay, let's call for the vote then, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, that motion is approved. Now we'll move on to that item number G, to consider resolution 939, authorizing the Universal City Economic Development Corporation's purchase of real property located at 302 Pat Booker Road. This is our second reading. So this will also require a motion.
Move for approval.
Discussion. Councilmember Shelby moves for approval. Second by Councilmember Bach. Discussion. Okay, call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
No.
Okay, then the motion passes as well on the second reading. So move now to our citizens to be heard. As you can see, it's a time provided for the citizens to address the council on issues, concerns. It's informative. No council discussion or action will be taken unless it's a factual response back. Limit your comments to 3 or 4 minutes or so. I'm pretty liberal, as most of you know, on this. And we do have one individual that has signed up this evening, and her name is Ms. Kim Eichelhart. So ma'am, would you please come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Kim Eichelhart. I live at 736 Cardinal Drive. It seems that perhaps there was some data lacking in the presentation the public received at the recent budget workshop. The PowerPoint presentation included pie charts, which were pretty accurate, but I started noting inconsistencies with the presentations made by one department after another. That's because while there are 8 primary expense categories, the departmental slides fail to list them all. For example, the Public Works listed only 4 of 8 categories for which it had expenses, and the expenses that were listed by category were incomplete. Under support services, there were 2 entries, and these 2 figures were total. However, 2 items under support services were not included. Once they are added in, the total for support services presented to the public is about $215,000 short. And add in the 4 missing expense categories, and there's another $51,000. All told, the Public Works budget that was presented to the public is almost $500,000 shy. And when you calculate this out for the rest of the departments, the overall difference is approximately $8 million. We all know that PowerPoint has its limitations. If staff cannot present all of the pertinent information, they should make clear that which they are omitting. Alternatively, perhaps department head presentations should simply highlight those expense categories with the greatest increases or upcoming special projects. This would be more informative than monotonous presentations with incomplete data that leave us perplexed. Or perhaps the public could be given a copy of a line item budget proposal so we could truly follow along. And we could dispense with the PowerPoint presentation altogether. I would now like to express my extreme disapproval of council meeting to discuss documents such as the line item budget proposal that were not shared with the public, either prior to or at the meeting. Whatever it is that council is looking at as they sit at the dais needs to be shared with the citizens at that time, or else considered an executive session. Secret documents are repugnant to the very purpose of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Finally, I'd like to remind staff that the state of Texas mandated for each county tax office to create a website where residents could easily follow along with the tax rate setting process for all taxing entities in one place. In Bexar County, that site is bear-taxes.org, and it allows for city staff to upload documents, announce meetings, and post the proposed tax rate. In the interest of making it easier for residents to follow along, please consider using this website in addition to the city's. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arnold. Appreciate it. Comments are noted. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to address council that didn't have an opportunity to sign up on the sheet here this evening? Okay, let's proceed then. Proceed then with our business for this evening. Our first item is tab B, to consider the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU with Reunion Development Partners, LLC. Ms. Turner?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, the EDC and the City Council held an executive session and heard a series of proposals for the development of the property off of Loop 1604. Both entities did advise the staff to move forward with Reunion Development Partners. We have met with them several times. They have presented us with this Memorandum of Understanding, which I would like to point out is a non-legally binding contract, but it does signal our willingness to work with them to move forward with a high draft timeline, negotiations, and a contract. And so we are asking council to approve this MOU this evening, and then we will forward it on August 11th to the agency for consideration.
Move to approve. Second.
First Mayor Councilmember Najarian, second by Councilmember Shelby. Open for discussion. Yes, Mr. Phil?
I just have a question. In your opinion, if we tried not to discuss more negotiations, would it be a non-starter for Reunion Group? If
Yes.
it's a little bit more outgoing.
Right, if we went through the MOU and then we decided that whatever they wanted or what we wanted from them or they wanted from us wasn't going to come to fruition, then we end our negotiations with them, and then we go back out and have discussions with other entities.
But I guess just to restate my question, so if we didn't sign this, they're not interested in discussing it with us. Would that be your first
Well,
step?
I can't speak for them, but having an MOU and laying out the willingness of each party to negotiate with each other on an exclusive basis is not unusual.
Right, just the fact that we can't discuss any of the matters that are part of that negotiation. But that's just where, that's kind of where you're saying they're not willing to enter negotiations unless we're willing to sign an agreement like this that says we can't discuss it, right?
I can't say that wholly. They're just wanting to know that we are firmly committed to them and to their vision. And before they start expending a lot of money, they want to make sure that we're in agreement with them on this exclusivity partnership with them. And that's the reason for the MOU. I can't say that they won't negotiate, but I can say it probably will start out by making our relationship a little bit strained. Kind of like dating before you get married. I'll remember what that's like.
Yes, Mr. Shelby?
So in a different way to think about this, this is basically a good faith agreement between the city and Reunion Partners.
Correct.
Thank you. And I was going to state it another way too. At that meeting where they presented their vision, we really like that vision. We don't like the fact that sometimes visions can get, well, we were going to do this, but we can't. We were going to do, but and things start changing. This to me solidifies that agreement that hey, this is the vision you had. this is the vision you like, this is the vision we want to keep. Don't try doing other things, because that
Right,
will not
and you have to
make it straight.
understand, they're putting funding mechanisms together for a lot of money. And it's kind of hard to go to a bank to say, well, I want to do this. Well, where's your commitment from the other party? I don't have one. No banker is going to be talking to you. At least they have this memorandum of understanding with the city and the EDC saying that we are willingly moving forward with them in negotiations, even though it's non-binding. But it does give them the wherewithal to go to talk to financial institutions and to other partners that we have to bring on board.
And remember, this MOU will go to the EDC. It will be the ones that will consider it at their meeting coming up next week. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? Just about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Turner, when do you think that Reunion will be in a position to present to the general public sort of their plans for the development to say? Because there's a lot of inquiring minds in the community that would really like to know what's going to be going in that area. When do you think they'll be prepared
So
to
we
present?
have 2 committed dates with them thus far. On the 16th of August, the staff and then I think the mayor is also indicating that he will going to pre-select committee, Mr. Goolsby and Mr. Coleman to be present for that meeting as well. Then we're going to start talking brass tacks with them. They have made a commitment to come to a September city council meeting and do a high-level presentation of their project. It won't be to the level that they've given the city council and the EDC in the executive session, but it will give them time for the residents to hear the overall high-level concept of what is happening, and then we will continue with our negotiations and plans, etc. at that point.
Okay, thank you. I do understand the need and desire of the developer for these negotiations to remain confidential, as difficult as it is for us to want to share with everybody. I hope that everybody will understand that in the long run, this is going to be in the best interest of the city, and that this body up here will be acting in the best interest of the city. I do feel like it's kind of like making our relationship Facebook official now, that we have now published in the minutes that we are dating Reunion, so to speak. I do feel like it is a little bit one-sided in terms of they can share the plans and the information with their investors, their creditors, their attorneys, everything else, but the city has to keep everything on the hush-hush. Like, we can't post any selfies on Facebook of us, but they can post selfies on their Facebook page. I'm a big fan of analogies. While I don't like it, I understand the need for the confidentiality, and I will move forward with it as it is. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And to your open meeting information. So obviously there are a lot of plans and items that have to be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then to the City Council and to the EDC. All of those meetings will be public, and the documentation at that point is public information. So it's just a matter of time before all of the details are known by everybody. But again, from their side, when they're working with their banks, I'm going to assume that they will take a selfie with their banker, but their banker is probably under some constraints not to post their selfie on Facebook with the developer.
Yes, ma'am.
Eventually,
the selfies will be posted in due time. How about
yes, and if we get engaged, then there'll be engagement photos, and if we get married, then there will be marriage photos and albums together.
that? And the reception will be at the grand opening of the facility. That will be the
Probably
wedding
have a ribbon cutting to announce it, and then I'm sure at some point we will have, a wedding celebration.
Thank you for playing along with my little
You're
game.
welcome, sir.
Can we let the audience know where the proposed location is that this would take place? Is that
For
premature?
which one?
What, this particular project? Can we let them know?
Loop 1604 from Bird all the way down to Kitty Hawk.
Okay, 604 Bird all the way down to Kitty Hawk. That's it. If you're curious as to what that is. As Ms. Turner said, eventually there will be a full-blooded presentation to us through P&Z, and it's completely open to everyone. They're going to know exactly what the intentions are of this particular group. And so we hope that you will be attending, and we seem to be very excited about the possibilities, but that's something that's going to happen down the road, and there's no decisions at all made. This is a memorandum that allows that let them know they want to continue. And then we'll go to EDC after that, and they'll take it from there. Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please, Chris.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Motion passes. I think you're going to be interested in this presentation when it comes up. Definitely. Okay, item number C, tab C, discuss and to consider the financial audit report for fiscal year 2020-2021. Turn this over to Ms. Turner. Please press them there.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, the long-awaited audit. We appreciate everyone's patience on it. We also appreciate the council members who gave us some extra time and attention to us and provided feedback for the staff and for the auditors. So we have Michael and Janet here with AVIP, CPA advisors, and they're going to go ahead and go through their PowerPoint presentation. And then I believe you also have copies of the audits before you. Notice it says draft on it. If council is okay with this audit the way it is and you approve it this evening, we will take off the word draft, and that will be your final audit. And then what we will do is get that posted up on the website and have that available for anyone who would like to look at it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. I'm Mike Delacroix. I'm an audit partner with ADIP, and I'm joined by Janet Pittman, who's going to, she's also an audit partner. Let me first state that. But she's going to work the PowerPoint. She went to school and has all this experience, and she's going to do the PowerPoint. So, as Ms. Turner alluded to, it's a little late. We typically bring the audit in the March council meeting, at least the years we've been doing it. I think we've been doing it since 2009. This year you had a transition in your finance department. It's not uncommon for things not to hand off smoothly when you have a transition, and clearly that's what we have. That's why we're here in August as opposed to March. We'll see as we go through the audit. There were a number of corrections that we had to go through and work with your finance staff on getting the financials in the right shape and kind of figuring out where those handoffs didn't occur smoothly and work through those. We're happy now that we're at the end of the road. I know your staff is probably a little bruised and beat up, but I think we're all the better for it, and I'm hopeful, and your staff is too, that next year we should be on a better timeline. So with that, let's go through a brief presentation, but again, go ahead and just pause me at any moment if there's a specific question on anything. Our time is your time, so just take all the time you need to get the understanding that you need. In the annual financial report, this slide just shows you some of the things we'll cover and what's in the bound document. The most important thing in there are the independent auditors' reports, which we'll look at in detail on the next slide. So you engaged us to perform an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Because you received some federal funds, you also had government auditing standards applied to your audit. It's just a higher level of responsibilities, professional responsibilities that we, the auditor, have to bring to the engagement. You did get some federal funds, and so we did do an audit in accordance with the uniform guidance. That's called a single audit, and so we have a report within the bound document on the single audit on those federal funds. The purpose of our independent audit is to determine whether your financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. After we went through our process, we finally did conclude, after the adjustments that we made, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, that the financials are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles in all material respects, and that's an unmodified opinion, so it's a clean opinion. If there were modifications, things that didn't comply with generally accepted accounting principles, we have paragraphs within the opinion, and that's not the case for your audit. Yes, sir.
So if I may, what that means is from the beginning, in the raw information that was presented to you at the beginning, everything was in order. There were a few minor mistakes, but everything was generally in order.
Not at the beginning. There was a process of cleaning through that data. If we had taken your raw data there's no way we could have opined on it. There was too many discrepancies within that data. So that's the process, and that's why the delay in the audit and bringing this until until August, is working through those discrepancies with your finance team and with management to get things stated properly.
Thank you.
Well, pose your questions to me so we have an audit trail on this. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so then, so the next section after the opinion is on the management discussion analysis. Oh, I'm sorry. That's on page 5 of the BALT report, and it has an overview of your financial information with some comparative information for last year. It's more of a narrative that management is giving on the financial highlights and reporting within the required presentations of the financial statements. A number of highlights that we'll cover on the next slide. A couple of things on the government-wide financial statements. Your assets at the end of September 30th, 2021 exceeded liabilities by $75.5 million. And there's a breakdown between governmental activities and business type activities. The governmental activities had $37 million and the business type activities had $38 million in excess assets over liabilities. Your net position increased $9.2 million from the prior year. 5.3 million of that was in your governmental activities, and this was due primarily to increases in sales and property taxes. It's a trend happening within the local economies. The sales tax and property taxes have been increasing. Business type activities increased $3.9 million, and that was a result of increases in charges for services for water and sewer, and the golf course had events revenue and food and beverage sales that were better than the prior year, which you'd expect coming out of a COVID year. Those things have bumped up. In your governmental funds, your total fund balance was $21.9 million. Of that $21.9 million, 14.4 was unassigned. In your general fund, your operating reserves calculated to just about 12 months of reserves. In the prior year, you had 11 months, so you've had a positive bump in your operating reserves from last year to this year. Your restricted fund balance in the general fund was $1.8 million, and those were restricted for a number of items, court technology, court security, and hotel motel tax. And then your capital projects had $3.1 million in restricted funds, and your debt service had $1.1 million in restricted fund balance. In your revenues in your general fund, you had $15.7 million of revenue, which was about a net increase of almost 321,000 from last year. That net increase was you had some increases in ad valorem by 329,000. Your sales tax increased by 318, and your permits increased by 340,000. But then you had a decrease in grants in 2021 by 612,000, and that was a result of you had the coronavirus relief funds in 2020 that you didn't have in 2021. Expenditures were $13.5 million, and those decreased about 360,000 from last year. And those decreases were in administration, about 316,000 decrease in administration, and police decreased by 277,000. And then in your proprietary funds, which you have 3, the water, sewer, the stormwater, and the golf fund, those all showed positive net positions at the end of the year. The water and sewer had a positive net position of $31.7 million. Of that, $7.8 million was unrestricted. Your stormwater fund had a positive net position of $6 million, and $496 was unrestricted. And your golf fund, which had been presenting a negative net position over the last number of years, we show a positive fund balance at the end of 2021 of $474,000, almost $475,000. That was due to an increase in operations by 612 during the current year. And then we had a restatement, which is highlighted in note 11 on page 51 of your bound document, of $1.3 million. And that was excess sales tax from a venue tax that after you service the debt service fund for the golf fund's debt, that excess was to go into the golf fund. That had not been happening since 2000. Well, we went back as far as 2009 because that was the records we had. But we rolled that forward, and that resulted in that $1.3 million restatement, which bumped up your fund balance, got it out of that negative that we had been presenting in the prior years.
Yes,
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to put this in plain English for myself to make sure I understand, because I'm not an accounting major, I don't play one on television, et cetera, et cetera. What this basically means, to put it from a family budget perspective, if I look at my checking account, we ended the year with more money in our checking account because we spent less than we brought in, right? So my income exceeded my expenditures. So at the end of this year, we were that much higher than we were at the beginning of the year. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Good, thank you, I appreciate it.
And for the current year, that amount was $612,000.
Thank you. And that's the same for all the other positions, increases, decreases,
Yeah.
because we ended up spending more than we brought in for whatever reason. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this point? All right, press on.
Okay, and then, so going to the back of the bound document, you'll have some compliance section where we put some additional independent auditors report. I mentioned that we were engaged to do an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That standard requires us to communicate some things on how we plan to perform the audit and identify and review controls within the organization that relate to financial reporting and compliance. So we review your internal control structure and identify whether you have any weaknesses. If we identify weaknesses, we have to categorize those as kind of control weaknesses that affect to a lesser degree. If they're a little more concerning, they're significant deficiencies, and the highest level of concern are called material weaknesses. And the difference of that is what's the likelihood of a material misstatement going through the system without the control structure identifying that you have a material misstatement. Well, I already started off telling you why we're late. We had a number of corrections that we needed to make. So clearly we had some material weaknesses within the audit this year. And most of those related to the segregation of duties within the cash activities. We had a number of responsibilities that fell under one person, and we identified that as a material weakness. And then the bank reconciliations, there were a number of miscalculations on the reconciliations that we identified through the audit. And so we identified those two as material weaknesses. And those are identified on page 110 and 111. We give a lot more kind of description of those. And then we also conducted our audit in accordance with the uniform guidance, the federal single audit. We identified the highway planning and construction grant as the program that needed to be audited in accordance with the uniform guidance. This was for the East Aviation Road project. Through our audit, we didn't identify any findings or question costs related to this program, and we are giving a clean, unmodified opinion on the single audit report. And then finally, a separate document that we hand out is the letter on conduct of audit. It's probably the one stapled in front of you. I'm just going to highlight some of the things, but you don't necessarily have to look at it. But some things that we have to comment on as auditors and report those to council is things such as accounting policies. We do review accounting policies that the organization management has adopted. If they make changes to accounting policies, we're required to report that. And changes could be anything from how they handle receivables to adopting new accounting standards. There were no new accounting standards to adopt, and they didn't have any, management did not have any new accounting policies, and we state that in the letter. Accounting estimates and disclosures. The financial statements have accounting estimates and disclosures. We have to identify to you what those significant ones are, and it's your useful lives on fixed assets, and the actuarial analysis performed on your pension and other post-employment benefit plans that you're running through TMRS, I'm sorry. Difficulties in performing the audit, other than the fact that we had misstatements, which we'll talk about in the next bullet point. Management was worked with us on all parts of the audit. We identified things that needed to be looked at closely, and they worked with us. We didn't have any difficulties working with management. They understood where we were trying to get to. They worked with us on correcting the areas that we needed to correct. Misstatements, correction and uncorrected. We corrected all misstatements. So within the staple document, we attached all the journal entries that we posted through the audit. You'll see there it's numerous. It's more than we normally have, especially for this engagement. But clearly there were a significant number of misstatements, material misstatements that we identified through the audit, but we did correct those, and they are corrected in the financial statements. Disagreements, we didn't have any disagreements with management. Management representation, they provided us a letter stating they gave us everything we needed to perform our audit. To our knowledge, there were no consultations with other independent accountants. We did audit the city for its compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. I believe we had one comment related to, and it's a repeat comment related to collateralization of your depository accounts. I believe it was over about $600,000 over the collateralized amount, at least at year end. And so we made a comment there that we correct that. Again, that is a repeat comment from last year. And then we had a few other comments that were not quite as significant as the material weaknesses that we disclosed earlier, but they are comments that we wanted to bring to the attention of both management and to council, and they relate to sales tax, and they're on page 3 of that staple document. Sales tax revenue, we noted that there was some transfer related to debt service from the general fund to the debt service fund that didn't get recorded in the financial statements, and so we brought that to management's attention, and we obviously corrected that through the audit process. Court liability, there was a misunderstanding of how much we should be paying the state for those court costs that we're collecting on behalf of the state. We identified this because it was a liability account that was significantly higher than it had been in the last number of years. And so when we dug into there, we realized that we weren't paying the state for everything we were withdrawing or collecting when fines were being paid. And so talked to management, they've kind of identified that and corrected it post-audit, but again, we did identify that they were not properly remitting the amounts to the state that they were collecting from the court costs that they were collecting. So, and that was our last comment. So with that, I'll conclude and take any detailed questions that you may have.
For discussion among council.
I don't know about you guys, but this is like Christmas. It's very exciting.
You're talking to one CPA to another.
I can totally geek out on this, but I'm going to try to spare you. I have a few comments. First of all, I want to say thank you, Ms. Pittman, and probably Mr. Del Toro too. I ruined her Friday and apparently her whole weekend, but she made the changes that I asked her to do, and I think it's a much better presentation. So just want to hit some highlights that I saw. You kind of hit most of them, but I just wanted to kind of restate them from a different perspective, maybe. Our general fund did increase its reserves, like you said, so we've gone from 15.6 million to 17.7, which means that's what we kind of have available to fund future budget cycles. So when we're looking at adopting the budget officially in a couple of weeks,
we should be taking that into consideration, and we have quite a bit. And you kind of mentioned 12 months. I would argue maybe closer to 17, depending on some of how sticky some of the restrictions are on the money that we've kind of got mixed in there. We also did, as you mentioned, spend less in 2021 than we did in 2020, which is, I think, is a good sign. And the golf course. So as you mentioned, we have the venue tax, which can only go for the golf course, and that's a quarter of all of our sales tax. And so what had happened in the past is it kind of accumulated in the debt service fund and hadn't really been shown as going to the golf course to support it. And so they made the change, moved the money, and as they stated, we now have a positive net position in the golf course. So the golf course now has a little bit of footing to stand on, and then in 2022, it's going to also get the venue tax, which will give it almost another $1.2 million to give it even stronger footing. And so I know management's talked about some deferred maintenance that they have, that hopefully this will start working on that. And so we can talk a little more about the venue tax later. I did want to ask a few questions. These are probably more for management, but one thing that I wanted to point out that on the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund, and it shows what we budgeted obviously, and then what was spent. And there was some golf course money that came out of the general fund, about $385,000, but that was reimbursed through the venue tax. So basically, no money from the general fund this last year went to the golf course. There were a couple lines that were over budget, and I was going to ask Ms. Turner if she wanted to just kind of explain maybe some of those two. One of them was in administration, we had capital outlets. 55, yeah. I like you 56. But you already, we kind of discussed these, so I think they're probably fresh on your mind. The one is the capital outlay in the administration department was over budget by 156.
Oh, the fire department?
The admin, you mentioned the joint base SA demolitions.
Oh, yes, correct.
Yeah, so can you, I wasn't here for that, so I don't know, notice. Can you just explain what that was again, so what all that happened?
Yeah, so JBSA had purchased properties down on East Lindbergh. When they went out for their funding, they received money to do asbestos survey and to purchase the properties, but they failed to include in their budget monies to take the asbestos out and tear the buildings down. So the building sat there for probably almost 2.5, 3 years. And so the city entered into an agreement with them where we would be the project managers and get the estimates and the contractors to remove the asbestos, to tear the properties down, get the land where it needed to be, and then once we were done, they reimbursed us for that project. That was the JDSA project.
Okay. And then the other one that's over is the fire department payroll. And
yes.
It's over about $172,000, which is almost 10% of the budget amount, and it was over the year before too. And so I'd just like you to speak on maybe why that happens, and if we have anything in place to maybe prevent, if there is any potentially going on over time, how maybe we might.
Right, so after you and I spoke, I did ask the fire chief about that. By the way, you ruined his weekend also. Because he had to spend all weekend figuring out what it was. He did, he had his records. So there were a couple of things that happened in 2021 that caused all the overtime. And one of them was COVID. So what they had is they had a lot of firemen who were out sick with COVID or had a family member who was out sick with COVID, and they were not allowed to be on site. So they had to bring people in to backfill their positions, and those people went on overtime. I believe we also had, was it 2021 we had the freeze?
Yes.
Yes, we had the freeze. And so when the freeze happened, for almost a 12-day period, we did not let any of the firemen go home because we needed them to be here for the emergency runs. And so we accumulated a lot of overtime at that. Now we have the ability to go back to FEMA to get reimbursed for that, which we did, but those revenues weren't received until 2022. So some of that is reimbursed, will be reimbursed in the previous.
So do you think that 2022 will be similar, or do you think we have that work?
No, they're already tracking it. So so the fire department always has overtime. That's the nature of the way that their hours work, and that's always budgeted in there. One of the issues that they've had, like a lot of, is they have been short-staffed. So they've been normally running only 5 people on a shift, which they need at minimum to make a run. And so if one of those persons is out, then they have to pull in somebody else from another shift to do overtime. So we did the analysis and figured out that if we actually had 6 people per shift, that the overtime would go down. So for 2022, what you'll see is when we added in one person, you're going to see their overtime go down, and then now we're getting ready to hopefully in the next budget to add another person, which means their overtime will go down as well because they can lose one person on each shift without having to go into excess overtime.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. And then I just wanted to ask, our auditors have kind of written us up for some material weaknesses, and I'm just curious if you guys wanted to maybe say, because they're stuck in the past, they're looking at last year, and so they don't really know about today. I wanted to know if you wanted to provide any feedback on what we've done and maybe try to address what they found.
Oh, in terms of the deficiencies, well, when you have a very small department, which our finance department is, we have only a couple of people in there full-time and then one half-timer. So there are a lot of responsibilities that they have to have as a staff, which is why we were having our cash handling procedures done, perhaps a little too much emphasis on one person. So we have rearranged the staff in that area and then moved people around, have different people signing checks now to take away some of those cash handling responsibilities. In addition to that, what we had found is that items that we assumed from one finance director to the next that would have been automatically happening in code were not set up automatically, but were being manually entered. And so we always made the assumption, especially in the transfer for the debt service, that was happening automatically on it every month, and get to the end and find out it hadn't been set up. So we have set up. The other thing that we had is Encode had been set up, that's our financial modeling system, had been set up and it did not have access controls on the financial end. So anybody in finance could get into any module. What we've done now is we've gone back and we've locked people out of certain aspects of Encode so that they can no longer have access to all the financial data at one time. They're limited on the areas that they can go. And then the other thing that we did was helping. Let me talk about the committed and the restricted. So the other thing, and a great recommendation from our auditors, was to bring in an outside person who is extremely familiar with Encode to help us clean up some of those old files and duplications and files that might have two similar names and probably could have been the same file. And so she will be working with us starting in September to go back in and kind of clean up all of the Encode stuff and then set it up properly so that it does automatically do everything every month like it was intended to do, rather than doing manual entries. Because when you do manual, there's more room for error. And then we purchased a PO module. So the purchase orders were done through a very antiquated process. It was done on paper. You fill it, I'm looking at Randy. He does more purchase orders than anybody else. So the purchase order process was such that he would go out and get his estimate to one of his staff members. His staff would fill out the purchase order, it would go to Randy, he'd review it, he'd sign it. And then the paperwork was brought up, was put into a little book, and it was given a purchase order number. And then it was sent to me for my written approval, and then it was sent to Jessica for her written approval, and then it was turned over to somebody else to issue the purchase order, and then to tell him to come back and pick it up.
The 60s called, they want their process back.
Absolutely. So we went to an electronic purchase order system, which Mateo is doing right now, where I get a text or an email that says so-and-so is submitted, and I can look at it and sign it electronically so it automatically goes to the next person. The new system is even better than that, because when the purchase order is done and the number is done and it's signed off, it automatically goes into Encode what the purchase order was. So when the invoice comes in, it ties it all together, and there's not 50,000 steps. But you are correct. The 60s called and they want their purchase order system back. Those are some of the modifications that we made at this point.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two quick questions. It may turn into three. Two quick questions. You mentioned a multi-year issue over the venue tax and transfers. I would be remiss if I didn't ask why we didn't find this before. Was this just due to the data and how it was presented to you?
I think it was kept in the debt service fund to pay off the bonds, and there's only 2 more years, and actually maybe one by now, you've already made the August 15th.
Yeah, it'll be made this month, so I don't know.
So they wanted to make sure that they had enough to pay off the debt service for the golf fund. But they were also transferring money out of there, just not all of it. They were transferring money to the general fund for golf expenses. They were transferring money out of the debt service fund into the golf fund also for operating expenses.
Was any of this related to the encode system not being used?
No.
Okay.
No, it was just making sure they had enough to pay off the debt, that they left that in the debt service fund. But they were transferring some of the dollars out every year.
It became an issue this year over previous years. Why?
There was a concern that we had this large deficit fund balance in the golf fund, and Councilman Vaughan started questioning it, and we came up with this enormous spreadsheet that calculated since 2009 all of the excess funds that were in there that hadn't been transferred, which is the prior period adjustment that you see in the golf fund of 1.3 million. And for the current year, we transferred in 644,000. That was the excess for 2021.
Thank you. And as far as the deficiencies, this is kind of the first year I at least talked about them in detail that I can remember doing this. Were there new standards set that exist this year that hadn't existed in previous years?
No, really they relate to just the transition in your
So you had one finance director for 7 months of the year, and then you had another one for 4 months, and you had a little bit of a gap in between there. And then they had shifting of duties. Some person who did this job was moved over and they do this job, so there was a lot of learning curve. There were some people who were in finance that were let go, and so then you had multiple people trying to fill in for that. I just kind of think it was too much turnover at one time. I would just call that a department in transition, and quite frankly, there's still a department in transition. It's a big function of the city, and it requires a lot of time and attention to detail. And so, yes, we are still cleaning up things from 2009 moving forward, but we're also cleaning up things from 2020 moving forward. And hopefully, by the time we get into the next budgets, audits and budgets, everything will be a lot cleaner, and we will all have an understanding of where we are and how the accounting system works and who's doing what job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. William basically covered my questions except for Councilmember Vaughan. Great job on diving into that. I appreciate the time that it must have taken. I remember doing that with building codes, so I appreciate you doing that here. You said that it felt like Christmas to you. Whenever she said that we may be having to look at another fire department guy, I'm sure that Councilmember Shelby felt like it was Christmas for him, so because he loves his fire department. Councilmember Shelby covered the bulk of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
I just had a quick question. When you were talking about discrepancies on the, I guess, court fines between what we were giving the state, obviously we weren't giving them their fair share. How long, is that what I heard?
Yes, you were collecting those, and you were actually reporting those collections properly through your accounting system. What was not happening proper was how much we paid the state. So it was coming into a liability account as we were collecting them. We were setting them aside saying, yes, we have to pay the state these in the next quarterly run. The problem is we weren't sending them all of it, and so a lot of it was sitting in your financials as a liability owed to the state, but it should have cleared out. It should have been paid to the state. So.
Okay, so I take it this has been cleared up since, and I mean, I guess my next question is that put us in the hot water at the state, any fines or anything for being late, or
no, there were no fines associated with it. Basically, what we had to do was work with the court to get updated reports so we knew exactly what variance we need to send to the state, and that was what we had to do to get it cleaned up.
I take it with this new system we have online, that's gonna be, is that part of that system too?
Well, there was multiple factors with it, so the court basically provides finance with a statement that we pay off of. There was, I want to say, there was probably some misunderstanding of how much actually was supposed to go to the state. That has been rectified, and there's a full understanding of how that report should look before it comes to finance, before we make those payments.
So obviously we don't see that, we don't expect to see anything like that in the future. Thank you.
No,
I don't have any questions though. I just want to let the citizens know that they should be very proud that this is an unmodified report. It's the best anybody can ever get, and the city has been getting those for years. You ought to be proud of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Councilmember Vaughan, it was like Christmas. I imagine for you, today is like the last day of school and tomorrow is summer vacation. I thank you both for all the hard work that you've done out here today, and in the recent past that you've put all this together. I guess I'll come right out and ask it, and ask maybe what is the obvious question. Did you identify any malfeasance within the city, any intent to embezzle money, or anybody that was acting willfully improperly?
We did not identify that. We don't do a complete audit to identify every transaction, but through our sampling, through our reviews of the discrepancies, we didn't see anything that would have elevated to that kind of discussion.
Good, and not that I had any indication that there is, I just wanted to throw it out there for everybody to get it kind of on the record. And lastly, Ms. Pittman, based on Councilmember Vaughan's input and in his words, the ruining of your weekend, do you think that we have a better report?
Absolutely, I do.
You do?
Absolutely.
Good, so in that case, Councilmember Vaughan, I was going to say it anyway, regardless of what they said, but glad to have you on the council to have put in that hard work to do this. On behalf of the residents, thank you for putting in all that hard work and helping them make us, get us to the point where we have a better report here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Neville, you're
It's just that we never would have had them unmodified.
Right.
If there had
That's
been any
true.
problems.
That's true.
Thank you.
All right, this is an action item, so I will need a motion.
Move for approval.
Councilmember Shelby.
I say.
Say what? I want to echo what our other council members have said, that Phil brings a very obviously professional perspective to this, and it's probably the most thorough look we've ever had at an audit. In the presentation you guys made tonight, thank you, Michael and Janet. Very thorough. You covered everything, and I no holes were, nothing was hidden. Right? You brought it up to everybody. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for the vote then, please, Chris.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Again, Phil, thank you very much for all your hard work. Fantastic. Okay.
Thank you.
And you too. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
And we'll get back totally on track next year with
Awesome.
we all understand what we all went through in the last couple of years. Fully understand that. So thank you very much for your time and commitment to doing the audit for our city. Thank you, Janet.
I know there's a lot of thank yous going on, but I do want to thank him and Jessica and their staff, and also Councilman Vaughan for actually looking at it in very detail. I do appreciate everyone's hard work. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to tab number D then. Discuss and consider financial report for FY 2022 third quarter, April through June of 2022.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, this is our third quarter report, and so we have Jessica and Mateo. Some of you have not met Mateo Garcia. He does work in the finance department. He's been there how long? A year and?
No, 8,
Almost a year.
9 months, almost a year. One of our brand new people. We have plenty in the finance department. So I'm understanding this is his first time doing a quarterly report, so feel free to plaster him with whatever questions you have.
You are under the
That's
gun,
the way it
man.
works.
That's fantastic. Jessica's here available for any questions.
I'm going to ask you to speak real loud so that everybody in the back can hear as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and present the total revenues for quarter 3 first, starting with the golf course. For quarter 3, we have $715,000, and year-to-date actual 1.9 million. General fund, $3 million, with a year-to-date of $15.2 million. Debt service, $433,500, with a year-to-date of $2 million. Capital projects, $169,300, and year-to-date of $306.4. Utility, $2.5 million, with the year-to-date of $7.2 million. Stormwater, $240,000, with a year-to-date of $819,000. Moving on to the expenses, we have golf course with $546,000, year-to-date of $1.8 million. General fund, $3.4 million, with a year-to-date of $10 million. Debt service, there has been no change in this quarter. Capital projects, quarter 3, $773,000, year-to-date $1.1 million. Utility, $1.5 million, with a year-to-date of $5.7 million. And stormwater, $155,000, with a year-to-date of $724,000. Now the revenue over and under expenditures for the golf course, we actually have a surplus of $168,400, year-to-date of $53,000. General fund, we have a deficit of $425,000, year-to-date of $5.2 million. Debt service, $433,000, year-to-date of $1.7 million, almost $1.8 million. Capital projects, we have a deficit of $604,000 and a deficit on the year-to-date of $799,000, almost $800,000. Utility, $1.1 million, year-to-date is $1.5 million surplus. Stormwater, $85,000, and a year-to-date surplus of $95,000.
Okay, any specific questions about that, about what we had there? There's some interesting numbers there. Take a look at. Mr. Vaughan.
I'm going to ask you some questions you probably can't possibly answer, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So on page 7, it has it through June, like all the way for the general fund. It kind of shows the budget to the current actual expenditures. And so on the far right column, it's showing in the bold second line. So it's 55% so far this year in the general fund. So this is 3/4, right? So in theory, if it's at 75%, we'd be right on budget, right? So the 55 kind of assumes that we're tracking under budget. And if you look at most of the line items there, it's less than 75. Most of them are in the 50s. So for example, like Parks and Recs at 52%, and General Services, which is basically streets, right? That's 55%. Do you think that's might hold up towards the end of the year, that we're going to come in under, or do you think there are large things that haven't hit the books yet that might close that gap?
There are a lot of expenses that will come in towards the end of the year, so I expect that number to increase quite a bit.
Okay.
And you have to remember this is through only June, so there's still a few months left, so there will be some expenses that come through.
Okay.
And what typically happens is in August, when everybody knows they're toward the end of the fiscal year and they have to hurry up and get all their stuff done, somebody in this room is going to submit so many purchase orders that it's going to be and you'll see a lot of these percentages type.
Why are you bowing your head?
It's not just him, it's Randy Meyer and Development Services too, but since he's here, it was pick on Randy Day, as y'all know that. I'm picking on him, but I'm sure on the expenditures, we'll see some increase in the percentages for some of the departments.
Okay. And then I don't know how you guys have worked this out in the past. This is my first finance presentation being up here. So I'm curious, this is probably developed over time, and it's a very simplified presentation, and it's probably what most people want, and I'm just kind of curious if there's, I'd probably like to see more, and I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in the council packet, but I'm wondering if there's any feedback on, do we want like maybe a clients committee so you guys don't have to listen to me or hear me ask kind of questions, or should I just maybe ask for some individual reports on my own and kind of ask for that? I don't know what the feedback is, but I don't want the finance team to have to create anything new, but maybe just running some reports out of Inco to show us kind of more of the details.
I think what we saw in the past, we saw so many detailed reports that unless you are in the business that you're in, it was almost impossible for us to figure out what the numbers meant. Almost impossible. So we asked staff to please take a look at refining it so when you present it to us, it makes sense. And that's exactly what's been happening. Rather than all the numbers, which are still available. If you want all the numbers, they're still there. But this kind of found a way to capsulize it and make it more understandable for all of us. That's why it was done this way.
And I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Because it was, I mean, you take a look at those finance reports that were like this, and we went, okay, what does that mean? And it was really, really hard for us to figure that out, really difficult. So we asked them to please simplify it, so when you present it to us, tell us what's happened. Tell us exactly what's happened, so we don't have to look at every single line item.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll keep it for my pillow reading.
No, absolutely, no.
So you guys don't have to see it.
No, that actually what you're doing is perfectly fine. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No question about it. Yeah. Okay, Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will say that we used to get even less. At one point, we got a single page with a bunch of supporting documents. This is substantially better than what we actually used to get. Because it was a really myopic view of the finances with a bunch of supporting documentation. So I love personal finance and I'm all about balancing my own checkbook, but I like to have something I could just kind of review and see if we see anything that's blatantly out of whack, and we can ask questions about it. And so, I mean, if you want to read all that stuff, I'm not going to say no.
With that discussion, I want to remind you that we still have part of the report to go through.
I'm sorry?
Yes. You still have your investment report, which is the back pages.
Which have the first page back.
This.
Pages 8 and
Also
beyond.
requires to go through.
Oh, as part of this report that we're doing on tab D, you mean?
Yes, so part of your quarterly report is also that you're receiving your investment report. So we have the investments on there for April, May, and June. And you can tell us that you looked at them individually, or we can go through and read all 3 quarters. And what do you want us to do? Because some of you seem to want very little, and some of you seem to want extraordinary detail.
Okay, let's take a few more questions and we'll address that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for Councilmember Vaughan reading this and doing like he just did, and don't ask me to get into the detail that he did. So I like our report. I love that he's getting more information. So, if he can get what he wants, that's great.
Well, that's very important. I totally agree. Okay, let's take a look at let's tackle the overall investment report.
I'll show you after.
Did you want us to go through them each individually, or do you want to just review them?
Review them, not individually. I think we're all fairly cognizant of what's been going on in the investment area. If you want to summarize it for us, that would be fine.
Okay, so let's start, let's really, I guess we can summarize. Okay, we'll start with April. So for tech school, we had a average rate of 0.2716%. Our ending market value was 5.145 million. Below that, we have all of our operating accounts. We have Techstar ending April 30th at 5.233 million. our savings account ending at 8.28 million, employee trust account ending at 1,075, our debt service account ending at 1.8 million, and our capital projects account ending at 2.7 million. Our tax pool, as I mentioned above, is 0.2716% average, and then our Techstar average yield was 0.65%. Total interest received for tax pool through April was $8,724, and Techstar was $32,393.
Mark, any specific comments about the investments?
I just have a
Yes,
quick,
Mr. Shelby.
slightly indirect question I'm going to sneak by. I remember when we moved from Bank of America to Techstar. I just generally ask, I'm liking what we're seeing as far as the returns on our money that are sitting there, but are we generally as a city happy with that move?
We are this happy with that move.
Thank you.
Not only in customer service and availability and website for downloading documentation, but remember that Bank of America did not give us interest on our savings accounts. They only, our operating accounts, they only gave it to us on our savings account. And with Techstar, we're actually able to get interest on all of our accounts, which is why we've seen such a big surge in our interest over the last few years.
Excellent. Thank you.
We love Techstar.
Okay. Yes, Paul?
Said that Techstar supports a lot of local things around the city too, which the new employees appreciate as well, and they love doing it as well. So,
thank you.
So maybe,
Okay.
Mayor, just to finish off the report, so that was for April. For May, in tax pool, the interest was 11,000, and at Techstar it was 47,000. And then for June, tax pool was 15,000, and for Techstar, is that 66,000? 68,000. And so as you can see, our money is in good financial institutions, and the interest rate that we have is slowly creeping back up.
You can see from April to June, the average rate for tax pool went up from 0.2716 to 0.8125. And Techstar actually went down a little, but we're still gaining a lot of interest income there.
Made the right decision at the right time.
So if you want in the future on the investment report, we can do the same, which we've done for the quarterly revenues and expenditures, where the first page is a summary, and then below it you have all of the 3 months individually. If you want, we can do one combined page for the investment report and put all the supporting document behind it.
I think as long as we can see the progression from month to month, yeah, that'll work. Yes, Mr. Shelby.
And I kind of want to add something on what Councilman Vaughan mentioned earlier about showing the percentages in there. In my line of work, we spend a lot of time working on budgets of trying to accomplish tasks in a period of time, and have a tendency to have things run away from us. I just want to make sure we want to have an idea from your point of view, particularly as we get through the year. Are we on budget? Almost if we have some of these that to us, hey, it's just 57%. To Councilman Vaughan, it's 57% because it's the 7th month of the year and that's where we should be. I think it would be worth notating or flagging any that you feel like may be a concern for us that we need to identify.
In terms of expenditures?
Yeah, expenditures, if we're gonna go over budget and we need to start, okay, hey, that's a problem. And I know you guys are keeping an eye on it, but maybe you can flag it for us earlier on, because it's always, bad news doesn't age well.
Right, understanding that within each budgetary item, there is kind of a natural ebb and flow to it.
Right.
So what's maybe high in one month may be very low in all of the other quarters, let's say, and then some are reversed. So.
But you know that. We don't. That's what I'm kind of saying. You will know the ebb and flow. So I guess what I'm asking is, so that I don't feel like I need to dig into the details of it. If I'm saying, and I know I'm one person, probably take most of us, but if we could put that, we're putting the trust in you to let us know, hey, the ebb and flow is not lining up. Rather than us trying to, and I know you have to come to us for budget adjustment if that ever happens, but I mean, we will usually know a little bit before you have to come to us for budget adjustment.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that, you know, back to Mr. Analogy over here, that we're trick or treating or we're getting our Christmas stocking and one person wants one piece of candy and one person wants the whole bag. We can't give a piece of candy and a bag, so you all need to find your happy medium so that what we get suffices for everybody. Everybody's stocking needs to be the same. Otherwise, you're creating more work for us.
Yeah, no, I don't want to, and I think that's what I'm looking for is rather than you guys kind of have to, I'll take it on some, you kind of have to dumb this down for some of us that are not finance people or Mr. Goolsby. So I do expect this to come out in a manner that the least, to the lowest denominator, basically, you know, of our level of experience with whatever you're presenting to us. And so when I kind of ask in that particular case, if you're going to do that, if we look at it and go, wow, that line item is only, we're going to come out and go, that line item is only 32%, or that line item is 90%, we have 3 months left in the deal. You know, that's, you know, if we know that you're going to flag it and let us know that that's a problem, then I'm going to spend a little bit less time kind of analyzing an off number at that point.
Right, so maybe we go back to a combination of what some of you knew from the past, where it had the highlights of what expenditures, big expenditures there were, and then this cover sheet for the 3 quarters, and then the detail behind it for those who want it.
I think one of the things to take a look at is are the numbers jive expected, and are they what you're expecting? And if there's a discrepancy, you can explain, okay, this is historically in this particular quarter, these types of things happen because of expenses that are not accounted for, whatever. And I think that's what we're looking for, some way to get that brought before us so that we're fully cognizant of what's happening. That summarize it?
And then you can send this to his house. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Phil.
Yeah, I think I second that. And I think the main thing that you mentioned that I would agree with is the big thing is when we go out to the budget. So I think you would probably have a better idea of, hey, this one's going to be a problem. I might hit the budget. And so even if it's just something simple as a bullet list on the front, like, hey, there's these 5 that we're tracking that may be a problem by the end of the year, so that we have some idea when we're doing the budget for next year that, okay, you know, maybe we're going to have some issues over here that we're going to have to throw some additional money at before we look at.
Right, we could probably make adjustments within the budget long before that ever gets to you anyway. And I can tell you, if somebody was at, you know, 95% expenditure right now, it doesn't matter how many purchase orders they submitted, they wouldn't be getting it. So that person, their behavior would have been corrected long before it ever. And I'm not saying it's Randy, I'm just saying it is Pick on Randy Day, so.
Well, if you invite more of the department heads back to the meeting, we wouldn't have to pick on Randy.
Yes, well, Michael was here earlier, he conveniently left, so.
Okay,
sorry,
all right.
Mayor, thank you.
All right, let's
I
press,
think
let's
we
press on
understand
it.
where you're going, and if we feel that there is anything that we need to notify you of, we will. And then we'll also maybe kind of track to, hey, in this quarter, here's some of the big things that happened. And that's what's in these numbers that you're seeing. That way it kind of satisfies the real high-level people, and we'll do what we can to get in there and satisfy the low-level people.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have
I'm
one
looking at all of
quick
you trying to see heads like nodding.
One more comment.
Use your direction.
Are these commitments or obligations? And I don't know if I'm using the right terminology. Budgets that I've worked in the past, you make a commitment that you are going to spend this money. That's kind of like your checkbook running ledger that you're making. And then the obligations are once the check has been cashed and it shows up on your bank statement that the check has cleared. For instance, Public Works has a street project that's going on. We have budgeted for that. We've written the check essentially. What are these numbers that we're seeing here? Is this our checkbook balance or is this our bank statement balance?
This is our checkbook balance.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Very good. I keep forgetting, this is the first time you guys have been through this process of
Yes, sir.
the budget presentation.
Yeah, and you're unfortunately at a little bit of a disadvantage is that you haven't seen the iterations of where we went to get here, but we'll do our best to accommodate all requests. And then just a reminder that this is an agenda item, so we do need to have these.
This is an action item, I do need a motion in a second.
Move for approval.
Shelby?
He.
Who do we give, Mr. Neville?
Neville can have
All right, Mr. Neville. 1, 2.
Shelby?
I'll take this.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, Chris, call for the vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Aye.
Motion passes. Good discussion, very good discussion. I think especially everybody reacting to the presentation, that's healthy, very healthy. Okay, that concludes our business this evening. So move on to our city manager comments. Mr. Turner.
A couple of things. We do have, obviously, the happy hours coming up at the golf course. We have a special one coming up on Thursday, which I believe is the 18th, and it is, what was the?
Roaring 20s?
Roaring 20s, thank you. Woo-hoo, lots of clappers for that one. And then we also have our Neon Nights Golf Tournament, which is coming up on the 19th, and the Universal City Police Academy Alumni Association is having their casino night on August the 20th. So if you think there is nothing to do in Universal City, you're wrong. There's plenty to do in August besides all the other events. We are greatly working on our calendar at the library for some upcoming events as well. And then, of course, the big push right now is we finished Movies in the Park. So now the big push is for that month of October where we have an event at the Pumpkin Patch almost every night and for sure every weekend. So we are happy to see everybody around, and I know some of them are exhausted just thinking about it. The other thing I did want to talk about was the 2023 budget. So in the state law, it requires the appraisal districts to give the certified rolls to each of the taxing entities by July 25th. And that is our 60-day shot clock by state law. However, Bear County has yet to provide all of the taxing units with their certified roll. And they started getting some of them out yesterday, that they have 68 entities that they go through. They won't say, but we believe they do them in alphabetical order. And we know where we are.
City of.
City of. Everybody's a city of or a county of. So there's that little faux pas that we're dealing with right now that's giving us a lot of angst. To make matters worse, Guadalupe County, of course, which we are in also, has to provide us with a certified tax roll, and they advised us that they're not going to have theirs ready until August 8th. So here's where the problem comes on that. We were going to have our tax rate presentation for you this evening, so you had a couple of weeks to think about it. That's not going to happen tonight because we don't have any certified rolls. We set a special meeting date for August 7th, so we can present you with the various tax rates that come out of the tax rate calculation worksheet. That is not going to happen either. So unfortunately, when we get to August 16th, which is a regular council meeting, we had it on the agenda to do the budget presentation and the vote on the tax rate. So as soon as we get those tax rate numbers, we will try to get them out to you so you can look at them ahead of time. But just understand that you may, when you get them from us, you're going to have to look quick because you may only have a couple of days to look at it and ask us questions before, by law, that you have to state your vote on the tax rate and it gets published in the newspaper. So that's what we're up against on this particular budget. And so we hope you all get a lot of gray hair over that in the next 2 weeks because I think Jessica and I are like almost bald at this point, we're putting our hair out, but, you know, it's out of our control. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, so I guess the bad news is that we don't have tax rates for you to look at, and we may not have them for a while, but the good news is that you won't be here next Tuesday, so enjoy your evening off.
Yeah, it's obviously beyond our control. We just have to react to it when the numbers come. And with two counties now with taxing entities, that's, you know, exacerbates.
But understanding that Guadalupe County gives their certified tax rolls to Bear County, and Bear County sends out the whole thing. So Bear County is not going to give us anything until Guadalupe County presents their numbers.
All that
It's pretty complicated. Okay, thank you, Kim.
And
Thanks
we're
for
not
that.
the only one in this picture. I mean, almost every city's having to go back through for one reason or another to adjust.
Nobody's
depending on the
alone.
county.
No city's alone.
I know. But if you're wholly in Bear County and you know, start with like A, like Alamo Heights, you already have your certified tax.
Okay, maybe it's just like AAA plumbing, right? You know, start with the A's. Make sure you get-
A&A Plumbing, yes. You should have called A&A Plumbing and Norway and taken care of it.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Anything else, man?
That's it, sir, thank you.
Okay, Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job on all of that. That's outside of my world. Outside of my world, I enjoyed listening to y'all. I couldn't wait to hear how everything came together tonight. Yay. I want to say kudos to Julie, Parker, and Preston. That was awesome. Those gentlemen out there doing that, giving their money away. My kids just bought stuffed animals. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Buck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Movies in the Park over the summer has been a huge success. Thank you for, and especially to Regina Carmona for putting those together. It's been a great success. One other event, Ms. Turner, that you failed to mention, the Olympia Toga Run is on the 11th of August. Is it not?
No, cancels this year.
Too hot.
No runny, no sweaty.
Possibly.
No sweaty, no fitness.
We're going to try to move it to November.
Walking in the dark.
Very well, okay, then never mind. Today I was at the library. I learned a valuable piece of information over the weekend. Library cards are not by family. We encourage everybody to go out and get a library card. They get a lot of statistics, so if you've been falling back on the excuse like I have, that we have one in the family that we all share, please take the time to go get an extra library card for everybody. Those statistics are tracked across the county and across the state, and we want to be shirts. Again, yeah, as Bear mentioned to Julie Parker and Preston, thank you for their donations to Parks Partners. Thank you to Parks Partners for the generous donation. I know that a lot of people will be looking forward to pickleballing, if that's the proper use of the noun, of the verb. And also thank you to A&A Plumbing for their donation to the Parks Partners for the pickleball and the Red Horse Park donations. A little bit of history for the city. August 18th in 1962, the Methodists broke ground on their church on North Boulevard. That was the first church to be established in Universal City, was the Methodist Church on North Avenue. Since we talked about it tonight, that North Lake area, originally that was called Westgate in 1973, and then morphed into North Lake 1604 1985, and by 1998 was still undeveloped. The real estate bust of the 1980s continued, and eventually the developers gave it to the city for free, I understand, 167 acres that the original owners donated to the city to the betterment of us. The city moved around and fixed it up, mowed the grass, trimmed the trees, repaired the sidewalks, and now the EDC is moving forward with that ownership, and we're seeing the success that that donation brought. The reason I brought it up is because it was in August of 1998 that the original owners and developers donated that to the city of Universal City. So huge benefit to the city that we are now realizing the benefits from. So to the original developers, if you happen to watch the video, thank you very much for your donation tonight, 20-something years ago, 24 years ago. All right, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Neville?
I really don't have much tonight, but again, everybody wonders why we have these closed-door meetings when it comes to discussing the property and what people want to do when they come into the city. The problem is that if someone had a development, especially if they're a large corporation, they don't want the word to get out because somebody else may say, hey, maybe we want to do the same thing. And maybe they want. That's why it took 3 years for Walmart, even though they had said that 3 years ago they were going to do this, it took them 3 years to establish. The same with the Marriott Hotel. They had a contract with it, but they couldn't avoid their contract, and so we had to keep that quiet until they made a public announcement. It's the way business works. It always works that way. You know, you wouldn't tell your neighbor you're going to do something. To make their neighborhood look bad, if it makes your neighborhood look great, you do. In the sense. But Walmart is a huge corporation. They don't like when news gets out that they're planning a development in a certain place.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quick, I'd like to just thank everybody. Had some successful programs. Was it Red Horse, Murder at Red Horse, something or other, this weekend? Well,
Deadwood Sword.
Deadwood Sword. See, it was a lot of people that showed up, a lot of representation, just a whole lot of fun. I want to reiterate what Mr. Buck said about our last movies in the park was an extreme success. A lot of people showed up, a great movie. Everybody had a great time, and Regina Carmona, as usual, put on a great show for everybody representing Universal City well. Kudos to the group that always shows up there, Spicy Ketchup, their technology team. They have the robot team. Every year they come out there, they do all the cooking and everything, and have they're supervised by their parents, but they do all the work. They've a real bang up job and have been a real benefit for movies in the park night. So I just wanted to put that on record that we thank them. And again, as Mr. Turner brought up, the postponement of the casino night is now going to happen August 20th, and I am looking so forward to it. So everybody show up and bring your nice outfits, spend some money, and it all goes to the police department, Universal City, the Citizens Police Academy, UCCPAAAAAAA. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. No.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to share one of my spreadsheets that I created this weekend, just one. I apologize for the yellow paper, but now is, since they've made the change to the golf course, and the golf course has some money in it, I think now is the perfect time for us to return that sales tax back to the property taxpayers. And so just to restate it again, so there's 25% of our sales tax has to go to the golf course. And so what they've corrected is that all that sales tax is going to the golf course. And when we look at 2021, the golf course has ended with some working capital, some pretty significant working capital, about $850,000. In 2022, just based on the budget that the city has passed and then what the sales tax is going to be, we should be adding another $1.2 million to the golf course. So it should end up with about $2 million at the end of this year. And then next year, if we were to convert the sales tax, it would get the golf course to about $2.4 million, and then again maybe 2.5 in 2024 when this bond is completely paid off. And so what I would propose is to consider or to request to put on a future agenda an ordinance that would call for an election, because that'd be an election, to convert that venue tax into a street maintenance sales tax. And the way that would work is the ordinance would come, we would approve it, and then it would go to an election that would be, we could call it for November. And then once if the election passes, that quarter, it would be sent to the comptroller and they would change the sales tax. So the sales tax wouldn't actually change until April 1st of 2023. So the golf course would get another half year of sales tax, which is the 800 in the illustrations that I have here. So the city has mentioned some deferred maintenance. This would also give them an opportunity to present what their deferred maintenance is on the golf course. And we could consider that ordinance. So I'd just like to maybe see if we can request that to be on a future agenda.
So you'd like to have a future agenda item to discuss what to do with that?
To approve an ordinance to
look at
election to swap out that sales tax rate.
So let me ask the consensus, would you guys like to have that put on a future item as a discussion item?
I would not mind having a discussion on that at all.
Is that future for the next council meeting or for a future
council meeting, not necessarily the next meeting, but one.
As a discussion.
Initially as a discussion, and then discussion could lead to obviously a proposal for an ordinance change. But Phil is absolutely right. It has to be voted on by the population. That's when it happened. When we voted that 0.25% was way back in 2000. I can't even remember when to do that. And that was voted on by council after it was approved. But the council, it would have to be done by the population. Right? Correct.
Right.
Okay, so the consensus is let's put it on a future item for discussion, and then you can expand on it dramatically. And I think thank you for your input, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, Shelby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll be really quick because I have to run. Thank you to everybody all the time. I'm just going to repeat everything, so I'm just going to waste the time. But I'm going to be running because my oldest stepdaughter is going to be getting her first promotion with the Civil Air Patrol today.
Well, great. Congratulations to her.
I'm excited to go in there and see that.
Okay, just a couple of quick items. I went to the change of command of the 12th Flying Training Wing yesterday. Very interesting. Colonel Rose going to the Pentagon as replacement. Colonel Taylor, interestingly enough, he replaced Colonel Rowe at Kadena, Okinawa, when Colonel Rowe came here to become the wing commander. So very, very interesting. And our new wing commander's wife is a native of Universal City. Really interesting. So she grew up here. Very, very interesting. Okay. And I'm going to the change of command of the 19th Air Force, which is the operation, the flying operation of our Educated Training Command. The 19th Air Force change of command is on the 19th of August. Just surprisingly, right? That 19th and the 19th. Okay. Mr. Buck, I understand you died very well last week.
Nobly, sir.
I saw the picture of you sprawled very
It was a good cause.
You've done well, okay. I'm going to echo some of the things he's done. One of the gentlemen that was at the change of command yesterday, General Herb Lessel, who was a public affairs officer at one time, and especially in Iraq, he asked me, can you give me some background on how Pat Booker got its name? And Pat Booker was a captain in the Army Air Corps. At one time, he worked for Captain William Randolph. The base is named after Captain Randolph. And he died in 1936 in a crash of an aircraft. And after that death, the Air Corps petitioned the Texas Department to have the name of Farm Road 218 named Pat Booker Road, and that's how it happened in 1936. So, and I just looked it up this morning because he asked me, and I said, you know he was a military guy, but I don't have all the background. Now you have it too. So General Lessel has it, and he's a happy camper. So thank you very much, everyone, for this evening. Very good, solid presentations. Again, thank you all staff for your hard work that you do constantly, and thank you in the audience for coming out this evening. This meeting is now 8:13. Now adjourned. Thank you very much. See you all.